Dear Harstem, TVP is IMBA. TOS shield regeneration early game means they can always pick off free marines and SCVs with their probe and stalker harass. As long as they have sufficient micro, there is nothing the Terran can do until he has stim and probably concussive shells if the TOS decides to do a blink stalker pressure. You have to sit there bleeding out units until your tech hits and then pray that they messed up their macro. If Terran survives the early game by some miracle, they have a few glorious moments in mid-game where their armies feel good until either Disruptors or Templar with Storm come and rain on their parade. My other matchups have 10% higher win rate than this one, and I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Name: Prometheus, Race, Terran, League Master, 4.4k MMR on the North American server. Alright Prometheus, you say that Stalkers and Probes are too imbalanced because they regenerate shields and their early game harass is too powerful. So this really is just a complaint about the early game, and I can kind of empathize with that, you know? It can be kind of frustrating if there's a Stalker out or a couple of Stalkers and you're trying to move out as a Terran player and your Marines just get kited the entire way to the Protoss base, and you started with 16, 17 Marines. You arrive at the Protoss base, there's only 9 Marines left. That can be extremely frustrating. I'm not quite sure how the probes are going to come into this, but I am looking forward to it, obviously. Maybe I guess he's talking about the probe harass at the start, but you shouldn't really lose too much against that. So what you do is you just fight the probe until you destroy the shields. Then the SCV that has some damage goes back into mining and you send a new SCV on that probe. The control for Terran is actually pretty easy. Yeah, this is fine. The Terran did a completely fine job here. Nothing wrong. Oh, Protoss opened up with a 12 pylon 13 gate. This is an extremely fast cybernetics core that finishes about, well, 9 to 10 seconds quicker than a standard 14 pylon into 16 gate would. And that's probably what's going to annoy the Terran player right now. Now, the Terran is completely unaware of that because he didn't scout. Although, I'm not quite sure if I would trust the Terran, even if he scouts what's going on, to know what it means. It's like, ooh, Cybercore is really fast. Is that normal? Whatever. Just go home. In this case, if there was an SCV on the low ground with full HP, I do believe that you're fine on a map like 2k Atmosphere because the rush distance is relatively long. He also is already queuing up a couple of Marines. I'm not quite sure how that is possible. I guess he just has a lot of money left over. Yeah, fair play. So he's going to queue up a bunker after he's done with his orbital or with his command center. Yeah, it's just barely not going to finish. If you have a full HP SCV on the low ground, usually you're fine. So this SCV can just finish the command center. These Marines will be able to take out this Adept as long as you up the depot. Well, if you don't up the depot, then Adept gets out again and might cause some trouble downstairs. CC finishes up, but the Adept already has, 2 worker kills? It's actually going to get a 3rd worker kill as well and might still be able to shade out. This is obviously not quite supposed to happen. Once the Adept kind of commits to going into the main base, usually what you're supposed to do is kill it. So you up the depot and then you get a free Adept. Sure, you'll lose an SCV, but your opponent is lacking a lot of scouting, not knowing when you're going to move out. You could hide some Marines on the map. Of course, because you didn't kill the SCV, none of that, or you didn't kill the Adept, none of that is really possible. Cutting a lot of workers, by the way, for no real reason. So you already lost 3 workers, and then there also was a big worker cut. You follow this up by going a 3rd CC on the low ground while playing 3 racks. Now, the purpose of 3 racks is to go for a timing in the early game at around the 5-minute mark with as many Marines and sometimes even a couple of Marauders in there as you can gather. If you have to get a 3rd CC in before you can produce these units, you'll just be cutting a lot of units out of your army that could be in that push. So right now you should already be walking and you'd only have 14 Marines rather than the 19 or 20 Marines that you would usually have. And sure, having a fast 3rd CC is good, but if you want to play a build with a quick 3rd CC and you don't want to do any damage, it's just better to add a 3rd CC before the extra barracks. That way you'd probably have a similar amount of Marines, a little bit less, slightly less Marines, slightly delayed stim and combat shield. But if you're not planning on hitting a tight timing with stim and combat shield, it doesn't matter if they're a little bit delayed. Also, putting the command center on the low ground is kind of risky because it allows your opponent to actually always attack you with stalkers and be able to kite away with blink or just by moving back. That's a good scan there out of you, Prometheus. I do really like that. And there's really two main tools to deal with blink stalkers in this case. And the first tool is a bunker. The bunker basically is extra HP for Marines. The Marines can sit in the bunker and they can't be shot at, but they can shoot while they're in a bunker. So it really is a one-way street. If these Marines were sitting in a bunker right over here right now, they wouldn't need the stim. You just maybe need to repair the bunker a little bit, but honestly, against, 6, 7 stalkers, you probably don't have to. Now, because your CC is already on the low ground and you're already mining from that CC for whatever reason, this is not possible. However, you don't have to be mining from that command center yet because you only have 6 workers on your natural. First, saturate your natural base, defend that natural base with a bunker, and then once you have a decent enough force that you can easily take your third base, maybe you have medevacs out, maybe you have a couple of marauders with concussive shell out, in that case you can start taking your third base. But right now, you're just exposing yourself in as many areas as possible for no real reason, except just to be exposed. Now, if you're an exhibitionist, that's fine, but don't take that type of stuff into the StarCraft game, especially in a PvT. Another stim gets forced here. And now you get a planetary fortress. Now, this is almost never the correct call to get a planetary fortress on the third command center, because there's almost no situation in which this is necessary. Like, I guess it helps a little bit against run-bys, but you should not be getting a planetary in order to defend your third base against 10 blink stalkers. You should have just been defending your natural with a single bunker, and then once your medevacs are out, at this point, you can easily fight back the stalkers, and you can start taking good trades. Like, the moment your medevacs arrive, the trades have been absolutely fabulous for you, and honestly, overall, the trades so far have probably just been pretty decent. Your opponent killed 12 of your workers, though, and that just wasn't necessary. So he's now up 20 workers, or 21 workers to be exact, and you're in a world of trouble. This has nothing to do with shields being broken or stalkers and probes being able to kite your army forever. No, this is just because you didn't build a bunker. You put 5 SCVs to mine in your natural, 4 SCVs at your third, and you just haven't produced enough workers either. Despite all of this, however, supply is still pretty even. And if you were to attack across the map right at this moment, I think you'd actually kill him. He has absolutely nothing at home. He's investing in a lot of infrastructure, and he's going to have a big power spike in about a minute from now. But with this lack of vision, it's honestly going to be really difficult for the Protoss player to do anything. I'd also just like to note that your opponent has about 100 APM more. Like, this Protoss player actually is quite fast, and he's playing quite well. Some of the things aren't quite as good, but he's trying to establish vision. He's scouted, he's controlling his army, he's macroing behind it. His minerals have never been that high. He's continuously producing workers as well. Like, honestly, this Protoss, he's microing individual stalker. This is 4.4k or something like that. Like, this guy is pretty good for the level, honestly. Now, you do get in here, and this will allow you to get a lot of these workers down. It's a good trade for you, or should be a good trade. I'm not quite sure what right-clicking the robotics bay does here, rather than trying to fight off these stalkers, but I guess you know more about the future than I do. And you just knew that robo bay would be extremely important. I'm not quite sure why. Yeah, in this type of scenario, you just want to trade out your army with his army as much as possible, or you might have trouble if he counterattacks. Like, sniping the robo bay is nice, but it won't do that much for you. It's not worth, the killing 4 or 5 stalkers here would have been worth a lot more for you. Especially because a Colossi isn't going to be super necessary for the Protoss player in the next 2 to 3 minutes. He will still get one because he already started it, but it's not necessary. It's not like he's going to die. He's actually in a completely fine spot. He can also just build zealots and more stalkers and be completely okay with that. So there really is kind of an issue for you here, my friend. It really is, just losing that entire army. Evening up the resources lost, but because you've been getting outmined for the entirety of the game, it just doesn't look that brilliant for you. Fort CC does go down before the Protoss. You're still down 20 workers exactly, but you're up in upgrades, and that's the one thing that you have been doing well, is just getting those upgrades. Without mules on the third base, by the way, or no orbital here, it does mean that your eco sucks a little more, and you're already behind in worker, so that's obviously painful. You're also not really trying to deny your opponent's vision. So far, you've been playing completely blind with no map vision, with absolutely zero scouting, no multitasking either, just everything in one big ball. And it kind of shows. Your opponent has perfect vision all around the map, has good saturation on the bases, is now once again getting a big infrastructure boom. So once again, in about a minute and a half from now, he's going to have a massive timing where he'll just be stronger than you are. I mean, Double Forge is also chrono boosting out upgrades. It's absolutely brilliant. You have a big army here, but I mean, there is a Colossi here and a battery. I would not recommend moving in there. At this point, I'd also start suggesting getting units that aren't just Marines and Marauders. After you have like 5-6 medevacs, getting Vikings, throwing down a Ghost Academy. These are steps that you can... I was going to say these are steps you can take. And then you start an orbital on your fort base. Now, this is absolutely the world upside down. The reason... So I think you're confused here, okay? The reason why you get an orbital on your third base is not because the location of the third base usually is perfect for an orbital and other locations are better for a planetary. So it's not like this is a good planetary location and no matter what base you build here should always be a planetary. No, that's not how it works. The reason why you want an orbital on your third base is that as you're getting your third base as a Terran, often you have map control and zealot run-bys and major attacks are not extremely common to come from many angles. Once you get a fort base, however, the amount of run-bys and harassment that a Protoss can do increases, as TOS tends to have a little bit more map control and map vision in the later stages of the mid-game. And also, if you get another base, you spread yourself thinner with your main army. So your main army can always defend one base, and it can push from that direction as well, kind of automatically clearing one lane where run-bys potentially could be coming from. However, if you have 4 bases and you have double orbitals, one base is almost always going to be vulnerable. That is the base that you will make into a planetary, and that's the fort base. Your fort base always turns into a planetary. The reason for that is because an orbital, the earlier you get it, the more use you get out of it. The more energy you can use, the more scans, the more mules you can use. So it is just way more useful. I'd always recommend getting an orbital as a third base. And if you're struggling defending the third base while getting an orbital, maybe consider getting some tanks rather than morphing this into a planetary. Just quick words of advice. And once again, I really would recommend at this point getting Ghost. Your opponent is spending a lot right now in research and development, you know, teching up, getting better weapons. It's as if your opponent is continuously investing into like bigger and better guns and you're still fighting with sticks. And every single year at the budget meeting, you just go, guys, I think more sticks is definitely going to be the way for one more year. But it just isn't. At some point, you need to transition out of that. And just having 4 Liberators isn't quite going to cut it. The EMP is probably the best tool that Terran has to deal with maxed Protoss armies. It just halves the HP of any Protoss army immediately at the cost of 6 to 8 supply. 3 to 4 Ghost is all you're going to need, especially with the enhanced shockwave upgrade that Ghosts have. Like, there's absolutely no reason for you not to go for that. Now, I do like that at least you're mixing in something, but I'd still prefer seeing Vikings against Colossi rather than getting Liberators. Liberators are very good at holding positions, but Vikings are good at attacking into a position and kiting back while kind of having the Vikings zone out the Colossi. This is a good setup though, and I do like this. You start moving in, okay. Move these 2 Liberators slightly forward. Form a concave with your army. Okay, at least the Marauders are being sent for it. It's not the worst micro so far. Sure, only half of your army is attacking and none of the Liberators are currently shooting. Oh my god. That was a 6 snipe on the Disruptor. Wow. You actually... I'm not quite sure if this was really good micro, or you got lucky that you shot that one Disruptor and that there was no third Colossi here, but... This fight should have been god-awful because you never made a concave in your life. None of your Liberators were fighting, but you still honestly did an okay job. I'm surprised. Okay, well, yeah. Well, all the Marines being in front, getting the Colossi swipes is not quite what you want. There goes all the praise. Whoop! Straight out the window. Was a good attempt, though. It was a good attempt. Almost killed him. And now that you've seen that he has a nice-looking army, you're like, okay, what do we remax on? 2 more Marauders, 6 more Marines. Getting the 3-3 upgrades, that is useful. Still no Ghost Academy, though. That is getting a little bit painful. It's funny to me as well that you complain about shields, yet you don't get a Ghost Academy. It's like you literally have a unit that destroys shields. It's like practically instant. It has like a radius that is the size of the screen. It is often harder to miss an EMP than to hit it. Like you just accidentally click and all the shields are gone off your opponent's arm. You're like, oh, didn't even know I did something. That's an EMP for you. You just continue with the Liberators, though. Not a huge fan of that. Salad run by in towards the main base. You see that, and you decide to counterattack. Okay. Well, look at this. This is some cute glaive adapter. This Protoss honestly is really good. If his main fight wouldn't have been so bad, this guy would be really, really sick. He has good macro, good control of his units. He plays proper StarCraft too, also getting the Shadow Stride. This guy's been watching some pro StarCraft. He's also pretty fast. Look at that. 253 for a 4.4k toss. That's actually crazy. This guy's proper. He really is. You move command some of your air army into the Protoss army. You end up losing, what is it? 2 Medevacs, a Liberator here before the fight truly starts. Oh man. This toss control is actually good. The way he moves with the Disruptors and with the Colossi. I really do like it. Poof! Big Disruptor shot hits as well. Yeah. You tried to do the same thing. I kind of want to see that again. You tried to do the same thing here as in the previous fight. But this only works against very low numbers of Disruptors. Or if all the Disruptors are right in your face. I really do like it when Terran tried this and it fails. I don't think anything gives me more joy in life. Literally nothing sparks more joy than that. Look at this. So you see the Disruptor shot. And it's like, oh, it's pretty far in the back. Right now it's like a split-second decision. You know, it's like... Can I catch this or can I not catch it? You shoot down this Disruptor first, you do another A move and you take out a Stalker, and then... Oh, it's too late already. Disruptor goes off, you lose your entire army. Not entirely the way you should be fighting against this. Not entirely. But, good attempt nonetheless, you know? I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I really do. You're actually trying to... Clem plays like this as well. Clem is really good at this, okay? Clem at sniping Disruptors, he's the king. He sees a Disruptor and he snipes it. You sniping Disruptors is slightly different, you know? If Clem of Disruptor sniping is kind of what Canon in D is, you know, the perfect, beautiful song, played well, then you would be, well, Canon in D, but this version. Canon in D. It might sound very similar to the original, but if you listen closely, it's just slightly different. And it's the same with your control against Disruptors. People might mistake you for Clan, but if they look closer, they just see it's not quite the case. Oh! Another Disruptor shot. Let's see if you're gonna try again. You actually have a separate hotkey for Liberators as well. That's more than the average 7k MMR Terran player. Ooh. Okay, now you can actually jump on this, by the way. Now you actually can, yeah. All of the shots have been fired. Still an EMP here would be absolutely priceless. I'm not quite sure how you're doing it, but the trades are even. You've been down the entire game in eco, but yet your army supply is relatively close, and you're still somewhat winning fights. Like, you're not actually winning the fight, but you're really close to winning the fights, which is, well, I mean, it's impressive. Honestly, I'm impressed. If you want to play this style, by the way, that you're playing, like, I've been saying for a long time now that you need Ghost and Vikings are great, but if all you want to do is just build Marine Marauder, at least you need to split your army. Because Marine Marauder in small balls against gateway units are actually quite good. However, if you're fighting a massive ball of Colossi, Disruptor, Immortal Storm, whatever, yeah, they're going to suck. But if you split up this army in two groups, one to the left, one to the right side, first of all, you can show off your fancy multitasking. And second of all, with your micro, it doesn't really matter whether you A move or not. Or if you're paying attention to the army, it doesn't change much in the outcome of the fights, at least not with how you've been microing so far. Perhaps you won't lose as much to Disruptors anymore, because you don't try to snipe them if you're not paying attention. Interesting Liberator position. Once again, Marines tanking all of the Colossi shots. Another quick trick is to put the Marauders in front of the army, so that they actually tank... put the Marauders in front of the army so that they tank the shots of the Colossi, and then your Marines can deal damage behind that. That is the ultimate play. Another cool trick is to form concaves, just to maximize your damage output, make it difficult for your opponent to splash on top of you as well. This is a good call, the base trade. You can't fight into this army, and thus the only correct call is to just base trade. Now, once again, if you would split your army in two parts here, one towards the right side, one towards the left side, that would actually really help in this endeavor of trying to win a base trade. Sadly, that's not what you're doing. Is this just gonna recall? I guess he will after he kills this base, right? I'd recall to this one. He'll recall to the natural. If he recalls to the left side base, he's an idiot. Okay. I don't mind it. I actually really like this. This is the correct base to recall to, I think. Okay, last time you got stuck in a corner, you decided to attack the Robo Bay. It's a bait Robo Bay once again. The Protoss saw what you did that first time. It's like, ooh, if I could bait him one more time into that would be sick. Okay, you just continue fighting. The moment you get trapped, rather than trying to trade out your army, you just really focus on killing all the buildings. Look at that! Once again, look at this! This is actually sick. It's like your panic response. You actually didn't have that bad of a position in his base here. If you just form a concave on top of the ramp, or even while you're down here, look at this. If you just split your army, make somewhat of a concave, there's not that much splash. Everything is kind of slowly but surely coming in one by one. Zealots are stuck behind Stalkers. There's only 2 Disruptor shots left, as this Disruptor already shot. Literally all you need to do right now is not walk into 2 massive Disruptor shots, and that's kind of what you do, because you're busy targeting down a robotics facility rather than fighting against your opponent's army. Oh look! Multitask. I think this was your rally, and you forgot to rally it back, isn't it? I don't think this is intentional, because it's not being controlled. It is good multitasking though. The accidental multitask, but still good multitasking. Wish I could accidentally multitask every now and again. I just move command my zealots into hatcheries. Doesn't quite seem to do the trick anymore. Ah, no, now you're actually controlling this. And you didn't stim this army, so it wasn't an F2. I'm very proud of you. Prometheus probably is one of the only Terrans that doesn't actually have F2 bound to a hotkey. He doesn't really seem to use it at all, and I like it. I don't mind it too much. I really like it. These 2 adepts have been... Well, this cliff has been abused a lot so far this game. I think this is like one of the tricks that Tipu knows, and then he just keeps using it again and again. Like the guy that I knew back in high school that would just show me the same magic trick again and again and again, because he only had one of them. Like after doing the same card trick 25 times in a row, it isn't quite as impressive anymore. But still interesting, nonetheless. Card tricks, very cool. Yeah, Protoss is just really far ahead at this point. I mean, he has 3.6k resources, or 3.6k minerals, 1300 gas as well, and you lose your base, walk into another Disruptor shot, and just, you know, the business as usual, I guess we'd say. You have 0 mining right now. You're aware that your opponent has at least 1.5 mining base remaining. Now, this means that there is a lot of pressure on you to perform right in this moment. You need to go do something, and that's exactly what you're going to be doing. You're just going to start marching across the map. And although this looks like the incorrect call, this actually is the correct call. You also snipe both disruptors, and then here, well, you tap out and you leave the game. Yeah, this was a very sad affair. I understand that you were upset by the early game, these stalkers destroying way too many Marines. But this problem could have been easily solved by getting a bunker or opening up with a real build order, like an actual 3 racks or an actual triple CC opener. Or you could open, if you really struggle with this, and this is a problem that you often have, you could just open up with tanks or like with a cyclone first, that way you can push them back and afterwards you can get tanks. You can open up with a mine drop and a bunker at home with a mine drop, and you just idle it in the dead space. That way, whenever the Protoss is at your doorstep, you send in a mine drop. And if he never goes to your doorstep, you leave the mine drop in the dead space. It's a win-win. It's a really cool move. It isn't great against Stargate openers, but if he isn't doing a Stargate opener, that's a cool trick that you can use to force the Protoss to stay home. However, if you don't do any of these tricks, you can still just build a freaking bunker and you're going to be fine. You don't have to float your third CC, and you shouldn't float your third CC to a third base location if you can't defend that third base location without taking massive losses. That is just kind of obvious. And you can say, well, TOS will get a way faster third. TOS right now had a third base that was mining for way more as well, because you lost freaking 12 SCVs. Like, no matter what happens, it's just going to be better for you to just safely SCV up or probe up. SCV up would be the correct word for Terran, I guess. Safely SCV up, and then from there on out, start expanding once you can safely take it. This made absolutely no sense. Your macro, honestly, was quite good. It was on point. Your control at times was okay, although I do believe that was more luck than competence necessarily. So maybe you just got lucky with a couple of good stim-ins. You didn't really seem to have a very good clue about judging fights when disruptors would be hitting you, when Colossi would be killing all of your Marines. You had some opportunities to win the game. That really leaves me just with one thing, and that is that although this was a frustrating game for you, you made so many mistakes. Your army composition also was quite terrible. Your early game was god-awful. Your eco sucked the entire game. This had nothing to do with Protoss or with shields being overpowered. This had to do with you sucking, my friend. And that's the harsh reality of things. It is what it is. All right, it's going to be it for me today. Thanks all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this episode of Is It IMBA or Do I Suck? And you think, hey, I think I have a replay where my opponent's race was truly imbalanced, be sure to send it using the Google Docs down below in the description. I'm especially looking for replays on the new patch. I'll still be maybe looking at some older ones, but if you guys have some new replays, be sure to send them over. And perhaps next week, I'll be seeing if what you played against is truly imbalanced or if you suck. Thank you for watching. Smash like and bye-bye.